What if there was a single mental model that could make your hardest decisions easy? A framework so powerful that it helped one man walk away from a six-figure salary to start what would become the most valuable company in history. That framework exists. It's called the regret minimization framework. And in the next 10 minutes, you're going to understand exactly how it works and how to use it yourself. The year is 1994. Jeff Bezos is 30 years old. He's a senior vice president at one of the most prestigious hedge funds on Wall Street, D.E. Shaw. He's brilliant, he's successful, and by every conventional measure he has made it. Then he reads a statistic that stops him cold. Internet usage is growing at 2,300% per year. 2,300%. Bezos can see what others can't. He sees that this isn't a trend, it's a tidal wave. And right now, most of the world is still standing on dry land. He starts thinking about an online bookstore, a place where people could buy books over the internet. Books seemed perfect. There were millions of titles in existence. No physical store could stock them all, but the internet could. The idea is brilliant, but there's one enormous problem. He has to decide whether to actually do it. His boss at D.E. Shaw tried to talk him out of it. That's a great idea for someone who doesn't already have a great job. And his boss wasn't wrong. The risk was obvious. The security of Wall Street was real. The certainty of internet success was anything but. So Bezos did what he always does when facing a major decision. He thought about regret. Not regret in the typical sense. Not the regret of failure, of embarrassment, of having tried and come up short. He thought about a very specific kind of regret. The regret of inaction. The regret of the road not taken. Bezos invented what he calls the regret minimization framework. The idea is simple but profound. Imagine yourself at 80 years old. You're sitting in a chair, looking back at your life. The question isn't, what do I risk losing right now? The question is, what will I regret not doing? When Bezos applied this framework to his decision in 1994, the answer became obvious. He knew that if he tried Amazon and it failed, if the company collapsed, if he lost the money, if people laughed, at 80 years old he would be completely fine with that. He would understand that he had tried. He had taken a swing at something that could have been extraordinary. He had lived. But if he didn't try, if he stayed comfortable at D.E. Shaw and watched the internet revolution happen to other people, he knew that at 80, that regret would be unbearable. It would follow him everywhere. That voice asking, what if? The framework completely reframes the choice. Instead of asking, what's the safe option, you ask, which option will I regret more at 80? Instead of optimizing for security in the moment, you optimize for a life you can actually be proud of at the end. Now here's why this framework works so well. Because our brains are naturally wired to overweight immediate risk and dramatically underweight long-term regret. When you're considering a big decision, fear shows up in real time. You can feel the weight of what you might lose, the salary, the security, the approval of people whose opinions matter to you. Fear is present, loud, and visceral. Regret, on the other hand, is abstract. It's future. It's quiet right now. Our brains are simply not designed to feel it the same way we feel present-day fear. So we systematically underestimate it, and we make choices that minimize today's discomfort, while quietly maximizing tomorrow's regret. The regret minimization framework is essentially a time machine. It forces your 30-year-old mind to borrow the perspective of your 80-year-old self. And here's what's remarkable about the 80-year-old perspective. It's clarifying in a way nothing else is. At 80, you don't care what people thought of your career choices when you were 30. You don't care about quarterly performance reviews. You don't care about impressing your boss. You care about one question. Did you live a life that actually felt like yours? The framework also has another subtle but powerful dimension. It separates reversible decisions from irreversible ones. Bezos thought about this explicitly. If Amazon failed, he could go back to Wall Street. He was 30 years old, Ivy League educated with a stellar resume. A failed startup would just be another data point in a long career. The decision was reversible, but not trying was irreversible. You can't go back in time and start Amazon in 1994. The window closes. The moment passes. The tidal wave of the internet moves on, with or without you. And then you spend decades wondering what might have been. This asymmetry, reversible failure versus irreversible regret, is what makes the framework so powerful. Here's how to apply the regret minimization framework to your own life. Step 1. Identify the decision you've been avoiding. This might be starting a business. It might be leaving a job that's slowly draining you. It might be moving to a new city. ending a relationship that isn't working, or going back to school for something you actually care about. Whatever it is, name it. Step 2. Project yourself forward, all the way to 80. Not 5 years from now, not 10 years, all the way to the end. When you're looking back across the whole arc of your life, which choice do you wish you had made? Step 3. Ask yourself whether the things you're afraid of losing are actually significant from that perspective. The salary you're worried about, does it matter at 80? The disapproval of people you barely know, does that leave a mark at the end of a life? Often, from the vantage point of a full life, the things that feel enormous right now shrink to near nothing. Step 4. Identify what you'd regret not doing, not what you're afraid of failing at, what you're afraid of never trying. These are different questions that produce very different answers. Now, this is important. The regret minimization framework does not mean you should make reckless decisions. It doesn't mean quit your job tomorrow without a plan. What it means is this: when you're genuinely torn between two paths, and fear is the primary reason you're leaning toward the safer option, this framework cuts through the noise. Fear lives in the present, regret lives at the end, and when you can think from the end, you make better decisions in the middle. Bezos packed his car and drove from New York to Seattle. His wife, Mackenzie, drove while he wrote the business plan in the passenger seat. They had modest initial funding, most of it from his parents, who invested their life savings. His parents knew there was a 70% chance they'd lose everything. They invested anyway. The early years were brutally hard. Amazon operated out of a garage in Bellevue, Washington. They packed books on their knees on the concrete floor. They used doors nailed to legs as desks, a frugal practice that became legendary inside the company. They almost failed multiple times. Investors passed on early rounds. Critics called the company Amazon.bomb. The company went years without turning a profit, and Wall Street was skeptical at best. But Bezos never regretted the decision, not for one day, because the framework had already prepared him. He had made peace with failure before he ever started. He had already decided, at 30 years old, that the regret of never trying was worse than any outcome that could come from trying. That mental clarity, that pre-commitment to accepting the results, is what let him persist through years of near failure. He wasn't just surviving setbacks. He was living out a decision he had made with his 80-year-old eyes wide open. The regret minimization framework isn't just for building billion-dollar companies. It works for any decision where you're choosing between comfort and growth. The question isn't what's safe right now. The question is, who do I want to be when I'm 80? Bezos has said it plainly. When I'm 80 and I'm looking back on my life, I want to minimize the number of regrets I have. Not minimize the number of failures, not maximize the number of safe bets. Minimize regret. If you apply this framework to even one decision this year, one thing you've been putting off because it feels risky, you'll understand why Bezos still talks about it decades later. Not because it always produces success, because it produces a life that feels like yours. We covered a lot today. We looked at the decision that launched Amazon, the framework Bezos used to make it, and exactly how to apply that framework to your own decisions right now. If this gave you something to think about, hit the subscribe button below. We publish new deep dives on founder mindsets, decision-making frameworks, and the mental models behind the world's most successful companies every single week. Think with your 80-year-old self, make the decision you'll be proud of, and we'll see you in the next one.